So thanks for having me. Love this meetup group. Like Paula was saying, it's been a hot minute since I've been out here, but really glad to be here again, and really grateful for all of you. And I was just saying, like, this is a really particularly resilient meetup group that's really gone strong through a lot of years. So I think a lot of credit goes to the organizers of it. Props to all of you for putting together such a great community. Today, I want to talk to you about finding your own way to influence. This is something I've been thinking and talking a lot about recently. And we're going to talk about leadership, but I think in a different way than you might expect. A lot of us think about leadership in ways that have been taught to us in a lot of different respects. I think a lot of us are in a corporate context often, where we hear about leadership as being synonymous with management, and kind of the two terms are thrown around interchangeably. And tonight, I hope that you come away with a broader perspective of the word leadership, and that maybe it gets redeemed a bit for you. If you hear the word leadership and you start to think, oh, well, that's not something that I'm interested in, or not something that applies to me. I hope that changes tonight as we get into this. There are three things we're going to go over. One is how leadership is more than management. Number two, about how you need leadership skills. And number three, how no one can lead like you. So that's what we're going to talk through. Let's talk about how leadership is more than management first. And I want to start just by asking for your opinion about something. I would love to know what's something you appreciate in a leader. If you could just take a moment to think about that and drop it in the chat, that'd be awesome. Approachable, honesty, authenticity, empathy, clarity, willing to listen, transparency at the same time from two different people. That's wild. Freaking radical candor from Scott. Awesome. Helping you find your strengths, a step ahead or maybe two. Supportive. Let teams be autonomous. I love it. Thanks for sharing all these, everybody. A lack of ego, that's coming in. Flexible, humble, and supportive. These people sound like lovely people that I'd love to meet. Okay, next participation item. Drop a thumbs up emoji if you were thinking of a manager when you wrote that term or when you put that in chat. Gotcha. Okay, so a fair number of us were thinking of managers when I asked this question. But keep in mind, managers aren't always leaders, and leaders aren't always managers. That's something that I think is really important for us to start to disentangle in our minds. And I think it has a really practical impact on how we look at the world and the type of leadership we celebrate. And when we conflate leadership and management, I'm a little worried, honestly. I'm a little worried about the image that gets in people's heads when we do that. And here's part of why. This is a really depressing chart about CEOs in the Fortune 500, and all the little white squares are white men, right? Like, this just illustrates how, if we're thinking of leadership as management, we are thinking about it in terms of the existing corporate hierarchy. And the existing corporate hierarchy is dominated by white men. And it's dominated by white men because of years of systemic racism and oppression and misogyny and a lot of really broken, awful, terrible systems. So while there may be great managers who are leaders, I think it's really, really important that we start to pull those two things apart in our minds so that we think about them differently. And when we think about leaders, we aren't conflating it with the existing system, which is broken and harmful in a lot of ways. And I mean, how are these white male CEOs demonstrating their leadership? I'm going to put the spotlight on someone from Seattle for a second. Jeff Bezos. This is a tweet referencing an interaction that happened last year with Jeff Bezos and a professor, Dr. Uju Anya, who is a professor at Carnegie Mellon, and was using Twitter to describe, around the time of the Queen's death, the kind of pain that colonization had caused her family, had caused her personally, and was using that moment to describe that. And to help people understand what the legacy of the crown meant to her. And Jeff Bezos, we're not linking to the actual tweets here, but Jeff was tone policing her and calling her out on Twitter. And that led to a lot of people getting in her mentions and DMs and harassing her. And that's how Jeff Bezos was using his leadership, right? If you can call it that, his influence that he had. And honestly, I think you deserve so much better. I think we all deserve so much better than those examples of leadership. I think the leaders I admire and look up to are nothing like that. And judging from everything you all said in chat, the same is true for you as well. The qualities you're looking for are not those qualities. And the people that you're looking up to are not those people. I think about practical leadership as it being about influencing other people toward better decisions, collaboration, and outcomes. And for me, this is a really helpful and crucial skill in my own career. It's something that I had to learn over a long time. And so that's kind of what I want to think about today. When we think about leadership, let's try not to think about it as management, but think about it as ways that anyone, no matter your role, no matter what you're doing, anyone can influence other people toward better decisions, collaborations, and outcomes. Because really, calling managers leaders is wishful thinking. That's what companies are doing when they say our leaders are telling us to do this. They're saying that they really hope that those managers are leaders that we look up to and respect and want to follow. But the truth is, that's only the case sometimes. Not every manager is someone we actually want to follow and respect and trust. That takes time. That's actually really hard work. We're going to talk about it a little bit tonight. So number 2, we want to talk about why you need leadership skills. And this is, a content meetup. I'm going to use some content examples, and they're from my own life as a content professional. But I think these things can kind of extend beyond our world quite a bit as well. So let's look at this. Again, this is my story. This is kind of how I'm thinking about this stuff. But you may have noticed that I'm one of those white men as well. And so I don't want this to necessarily be your story. This is just how I'm thinking about it. And I hope there are things here that you can take and adapt and make your own. Design is a lot of things. Design is how we do things, right? If you think about the content world, when we talk about design being how, we're thinking about like how we write a message or how we create an error or how we put together the flow for an onboarding. So that's something that we encounter in design. And I think that's where a lot of content people spend a lot of time these days, especially in a product context. We're thinking like, okay, how do I do this thing that I've been asked to do? But design is also what? Design is what we're building, what we're choosing to do in the first place, and what we're deciding to create. So I think if you start to back up a little bit on this continuum of shipping products to, on one end and discovering ideas on the other end, what can kind of be in the middle of that? And then over here, way on the end, we have things that are firmly in the place of discovery and ideas, things like why? Why are we doing this in the first place? What benefit does it offer to the people that we're creating it for? And I don't know about you, but a lot of times people have a hard time understanding that this is what we do. And I think Candy Williams describes it really well in this quote. She says, it can be hard for some people to get their head around the fact that design isn't just the way things look as a whole. So if we tell people we are content professionals, that we're part of the design process, sometimes they don't quite understand what that means. They think it's about, all the way at the end, writing those words, figuring out how we should say the thing. So for me, in my own career, leadership became a really important way for me to start to back up and get involved in conversations further up this continuum. It was helping me move into conversations about what we were building. It was helping me move into conversations about why we were building the thing in the first place, and helping me have influence on that. Because I was realizing that I couldn't write my way out of every problem. I couldn't just solve it all the way at the end with thinking about how to do it. Sometimes I had to get involved much earlier in the process. So I want to just walk you through a story about how I did that in the past. I want to show you a bit about how you can use leadership skills to design great experiences. And to do it, I'm going to tell you a story about a terrible feature and a difficult product manager. So at the time when this happened, I was not in a leadership role. I was not a manager in any sense. I grew into one in this role into managing a few people on the team. But when this started happening, I wasn't managing anyone, and I was a pretty, like a mid-level IC. I was junior to the product manager that I am describing in these stories, in terms of like the corporate pay band, the corporate hierarchy, and also in terms of like who got to make decisions about things. And I was new to the company. So I didn't have a lot of influence. I didn't have a lot of relationships that I had built over time. And I was working on conversational interfaces, and this is an example of one of the ones that I was supposed to work on. And it's pretty intense, as you can see. This was more or less handed to me, already built, and it's heavy on information. People were saying like, hey, can you just take a look at this and edit it and kind of get it to a good place? And I was really overwhelmed to start. But beyond all that, I saw a big problem. Way over here, we had all these things that people could say to access this information through the conversational UI. And we had some problems with that. Here are the things that they would say. What are the benefits of the feature name? What are the different feature name programs? What does my customer get for signing up with this feature? The problem is no one was asking these questions, and we actually knew it. We had data that would tell us that they weren't asking these questions. And so I thought, what is the point of putting all this time and energy into building out this feature when no one will get to it in the first place? You can't make something popular just by building it in a conversational UI. You have to go after what people are actually saying. So I thought I had a pretty clear case to talk to the product manager and get us to change course and build something else. Like I said, no one was asking the questions. The topic itself accounted for a fraction of the percent of all support conversations, and you can't make a topic popular this way. So I went to the product manager and said, hey, this is a bad idea. I have a whole list here of reasons this is a bad idea. Let's change course. And I totally thought the product manager was just going to be like, oh yeah, I get it. Sure, let's change course. And unfortunately, he said, I guess we have different opinions, but I'm in charge and we're on a deadline. It's not an exact quote, but that's definitely what it felt like. It felt pretty door in the face kind of moment here. And honestly, I was ready to quit. I was like, this is why do I even have this job? This person's not going to listen to what I'm saying. Like these are valid points. He's just ignoring them, and we're moving on with life. I don't really get it. What's the point? But I decided not to. And I want to take a moment to pause here and just say, like, there may be really difficult work situations where the right choice is to quit, right? Like there may be moments that are you're dealing with toxic personalities, or you have better opportunities, and there's every reason to move on. There were reasons I didn't. The reasons I didn't in this case were that I was having really good work-life balance and the opportunity to spend a lot of time with my family. During this time, I was also writing a book, and I wanted to have the time to do that, and it gave me the time to do that. So I was thinking of those trade-offs, and I was thinking like, well, since I'm going to stay here, what are some things I can do in the middle of this hard situation to help? So I decided to work on one problem at a time. And I started to just kind of break them down in my head. I think even in my journal and in my notes, just started to think through what are all the things I'm encountering here that are making this situation really, really hard. Problem number one, other people were doing my job. Not sure if you've ever felt this feeling at work, but it's unpleasant, right? Like you feel like you're hired for your particular skills with your abilities, and other people are telling you how to do it, or they're just taking over and doing it for you. And it's really demoralizing, right? So one of the things that I did, to address this was I came to the product manager and I said, it seems like we're not always clear on what different roles are and what we're responsible for. Can I help with that? And I was trying something new here that some wise people in my life encouraged me to try, which was instead of being frustrated and instead of describing the problem, try to put something together that will help solve the problem. Offer your services, offer to do something that will bring value to the team. So I asked this question, and the product manager was like, "Sure, let's give it a shot. I see your point." The team was new to working with conversation designers anyway. So I put together a presentation that I took around to members of the team, where I started to define our responsibilities and show how we fit into the process. And I put together this slide, which talked about conversation designers in particular and what we were responsible for. And you notice things that are in here that I was really intentional about, like under design, write all user-facing dialogue. Maybe something that a conversation designer would assume is their job, but I just wanted to make it clear, for everyone else that that is our responsibility. That's what we're owning as a team. The other thing that I was thinking about was discovering user needs, because I was thinking about how this feature we were working on was a huge waste of time that no one really wanted. And if our responsibility was to discover those user needs, we could hopefully start building things that people actually did want. The second problem, I was being excluded from key meetings and decisions. So people were deciding what to build without involving me or my teammates. And that was also really discouraging. We'd sort of get these things either half-baked or decided upon already and being told to just execute them, which if you're a creative person, that is also really draining and really hard, right? So I wanted to get involved in these moments and bring our voice to the table as well. So I talked to this product manager again, who I was having this hard time with, and I said, I asked the question, when should we be collaborating? Can I make a picture to help figure it out? Because it felt like it was happening ad hoc all the time. And this is the picture that I worked on with the team. And it's pretty simple, right? I'm a content person. I'm not especially visual skilled, but here we had our typical agile process. We had our sprints, and I just wanted to show how there were moments when we would take the lead. And there were moments when, engineering would take the lead or the product owners would take the lead. And I also put these ghosted out areas in here as well to help show that we should be really involved in what the other people were working on. So if product was working on discovery and backlog refinement, we should be right there with them the whole time. And engineering should be with there for part of the time because they need to help us figure out things like feasibility. So yeah. Put this together, the team was supportive. And I was starting to get encouraged by this really discouraging situation. I was starting to feel like we had a chance. So problem number 3, we're building terrible features. Remember, I was not proud of the work we were doing. I was really disillusioned. I was thinking there was no way this would work out. And I had to think through how I would tackle this one. I went to the product manager and I said, it seems like we get bogged down in feature discussions. Can I create some shared criteria? And I'm sure the product manager was thinking in his head, of course we get bogged down in feature discussions, Michael, because you're always bogging us down in feature discussions. Like you're always over there complaining about the content and how, it's not meeting user needs. But what he said was, okay, sure, fine, Michael. Another one of your ideas, go ahead, give it a shot. Let's see what you can do. And so what I did was I created just a little canvas for us to fill out as a team as we were thinking about features we wanted to bring in. And I put a few things in here that I wanted to cover. And this is something I would screen share. I guess nowadays I'd be making it in Miro or some tool like that. And I'd fill out each of the fields kind of as we were talking about features at a high level. And the thing is, they could usually think through what they wanted the feature to do, right? That top line, that was easy to fill out. The second one we often had, sometimes we didn't, right? What is the business problem? What business benefit are we going to get from this? But the last two, we usually didn't get any information on in early conversations. So I made it part of our process. What are the user needs? What problem are we solving for people? And what are the design principles? What do we want the experience to be like? And I brought this and we did it as a team, which meant that I could add ideas too, which means I could add, what I thought the design should be like as well. And we're having that conversation before I come to them with the design and they give feedback on it. And that way I can reference back and say, hey, remember, we're a team. And as a team, we decided this is what we wanted the experience to be like. And we could reference back to this. And it wasn't me arguing with them anymore. It was us thinking about it in advance and then referring back to something we'd all created to have an idea of what we wanted to do. So you may remember, this is the before situation where I was saying, this is a bad idea. Look at all the reasons this is a bad idea. And the person on the other end was saying, yeah, too bad. I'm in charge. We're moving forward anyway. And then we moved to something more like this, where I was saying, here's how I can help us work better together. What do you think? And the product manager saying, thank you. I have a few thoughts, but this will be a big help. But here's the thing. I don't want to share this story with you and have you think that this was a quick and easy solution. Everything I'm describing here took place over a year and a half of working together with this team and building those relationships and building those new habits and helping them understand where I was coming from. And a lot of it also took just like getting to know people on a human level and learning about who they were and what they cared about. So I really don't want this to sound like it was a quick, easy, overnight thing, but I do share it because I think a lot of us have been in similar places. For me, I've been through these challenges many times with many teams. And I just hope that you start to see that you can change the situation. You can change the scenario a bit, even if you start to feel stuck. And in fact, this product manager, I had a really hard time with him the entire time I worked there at this job, like 2.5 years. And I never thought that he was listening to anything I was saying. I thought he didn't respect what I was bringing to the table. And then 6 months after I left the job, so this was like 3 years later, he sent me this text message out of the blue where he said, hey, I hope you're doing great. And he's talking about my LinkedIn bio at the time, which was saying experiences over products. And he was like, it's a simple statement. It used to irritate me because I was green. It made me feel that the UX department was greater than another department that owned product. And I was so dumb. As I continue to grow and learn, I advocate and champion experience daily. It's a constant conversation. And again, like I didn't expect this. I didn't even think I was making any headway or progress with the person. And I share this story just because I hope that if you're in a situation where you feel like you may not be making progress, it's also really important to understand you may not be seeing the impact you're having. You may not be seeing the change you're making in other people's lives, but it's real and it's happening. As long as you're out there doing what you do and doing what you believe in. So you don't need leadership. You don't need a leadership role to lead the conversation. That's kind of what I want to leave you with. Anyone can do this. Anyone on this call, anyone you work with, it's something you can choose to lean into, something you can choose to pursue. And that's what I want to get to next. I want to talk about why no one can lead like you, because the truth is we're all really different people with really different approaches to how we live and what we value and how we move through life. And that's a good thing, actually. So if you remember this definition of leadership from the beginning, practical leadership is about influencing other people toward better decisions, collaboration, and outcomes. How can we do that? How can each of you do that in your own way? What are some of the ways that you individually can lead? I have a few ideas that I want to walk you through, and this is not an exhaustive list. It's just a few thought starters for you to think about. So here are some ideas. One is authority. Authority is a popular one, and this is the one that conflates leadership and management. This is the one that I think causes a lot of damage, because when managers lean on this too heavily, they're basically just using power dynamics to be leaders and to get people to follow them. So really, the people who use authority the best, in my mind, are the ones who actually choose to give up authority. They have it and they choose to rely on other methods to actually lead people, because authority doesn't really create leadership, right? Authority is something that you have to be really careful with. Entertainment is super legit in terms of leadership. If you can make people smile, if you can make people laugh, if you're someone who can brighten up a room and encourage people when they're having a hard time, this is a great way to lead other people and influence them. Maybe you're someone who leads through having strong beliefs and things that you really care deeply about and think deeply about all the time. When you give other people something to believe in and you create shared belief around an idea or concept, that can be a really powerful way for you to lead. Maybe you're someone who is a great observer and takes the time to notice things about a situation or about a person. When you notice those things, they give you a lot of information about how you can move forward and about how you might proceed down the right path. So if you're that type of person who's an observer, that can be a really great way to start to lead. Trust. Trust is something that's very, very difficult to get because you have to build it up over time. I think that's ultimately what happened with that product manager I described in that last story, is that I worked to build trust with him and got it eventually, even though it was in that case, like even after I'd left the job, right? But trust is something that takes a long time to build and grow, but it's something that is incredibly strong once you build it. Once you build those relationships and help other people see how you can trust each other and trust you, that can really lead you to really great moments. Maybe you're someone who is very good at planning and loves to think everything through, step by step, what you're going to do next, what the procedure would be, what we need to get it done. People who are great at planning can be incredible leaders because they're prepared and they know where we should go next. Maybe you're someone who is really generous. Generosity is something that sticks out in our world, especially because we live in a world that's filled with transactions. You do this for me, I'll do this for you. A lot of our world is built on that. So when you do something for someone, whether it's giving them time, whether it's giving them your thoughts, whether it's giving them your compassion, whether it's giving them even material resources, that is something that really stands out in our world. Maybe you're someone who really likes to think things through deeply and thoughtfully. I used to work with someone who was very quiet and often didn't speak up in big conversations, but was really sought after throughout the organization because he was a deep thinker who could see how everyone's area connected to others. And he was someone who people looked to for advice and sought out a lot because of his ability to think deeply. I think that's something you can really draw on as a leader as well. Next up, humility. I think this is another one that really kind of stands stands out because it's so uncommon in a world where we're kind of driven to promote ourselves and be talking about ourselves so much. When you're able to step back and highlight the accomplishments and achievements of other people, that is an incredible way to lead. And I want to just leave you with some thoughts from other people. And these are people who are leaders I admire in my own life, who have careers outside of the content world. And I thought that'd be interesting to hear from those types of voices and hear what they have to say about how they think about leadership, in case it strikes something with you. Here is Anna Badmus, who describes herself as an advocate and advisor, a daughter, sister, and friend. And Anna says, well, the work we do as leaders is really important. It's important to understand the people you're working with. What motivates them? What is their why? When you know this, that you can speak in a language they will respond to. You'll also be speaking to the whole person versus the outcome you hope to achieve. I love that last sentence in particular, because I think about how in the workplace, so much I've often been guilty of not speaking to the person I'm speaking to, but speaking to the outcome I wanted to get from them, right? I think it's so powerful to remember that we need to be speaking to the whole person on the other end, that we need to learn more about them and care about them. This is Alberto Aguilar, who describes himself as a multidisciplinary artist and teacher who likes to walk as a way of thinking through his next moves. Alberto says that leadership is a willingness to include others' ideas and expertise, the ability to create an environment that welcomes play and experimentation, a flexibility to have a project be taken to unexpected places. Now, I am a big control person, so when I see this quote and I think about a flexibility to have a project be taken to unexpected places, that's something that like really challenges me and how I think about my work a lot of times, because I'm wanting to like control the outcome and figure out how everything is going to fit. But it kind of shows you that if you have this flexibility, if you're willing to be going in unexpected places, that's something that can really stand out to people, and it can really help them feel welcome and included in the process as you go through it. Last, we're going to hear from Louisa Olushoga, a mental health advocate who enjoys building relationships and feels most restored when spending time with people. Louisa says, I feel like a good leader learns from the people around them. There's nothing that says if you're a leader, you know a lot because of your position. I learn from my kids every single day. And even though I have parental authority, I want them to see that I'm in this with them, that there's no limit to who I can be for them. I love that quote. So powerful. As a parent myself, it really resonates with me, but also it just makes me think about how powerful it is if you can help people understand that you're there with them, you're there for them, and you want to see them succeed. So again, we talked about how leadership is more than management. We talked about how you need leadership skills, and we talked about how no one can lead like you. And that's what I have to share today. I'm really grateful for you all inviting me. If you want to explore this more, you can sign up for my newsletter and workshops at leadinglikeyou.com. So I send out a monthly-ish newsletter on this topic. And I have some workshops where we go into material like this, but practice techniques that will help you influence and lead in your own career. The next one I have is Friday, July 7th, called Collaborating with Confidence. And this one is meant for people of all disciplines and backgrounds. Then I have one specifically for writers coming up. And this one is actually for APAC audiences in particular. It's going to be me staying up late on a Sunday night so that you all can get it at APAC Monday morning. So Monday, July 24th, APAC time is when we'll be doing that one. Thanks again for having me. And of course, I'll be hanging around for questions if we have some.
Great. Thanks, Michael.
Awesome. We do have some questions in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and go through some of those. First of all, just a couple of quick comments. One is when you were talking about sort of the first case somebody was really pleased that you actually influenced that person to grow. And I think that's a really important point to make, is that we can absolutely, as ICs, influence people. And I think that's a really strong takeaway. Scott also had a question about the time frame, and I think it was with regard to that first scenario. Scott, let's see, can I unmute you? There we go. Scott, if you would like to elaborate, that would be great. But he says, for those of us in consulting, not in-house, how have some of us built relationships on these short moments of greatness?
That's a good question. Yeah, I didn't mean to imply it was impossible in a short time frame. But I did want to normalize these things taking time as well. I'm trying to think through, like I think some of the if I could describe them as shortcuts, ways to get collaboration going faster would be to really be intentional about like internal networking, setting up time to just meet with people one-on-one with no agenda, to get to know who they are and what their motivations are and a bit about them as people. That's always been something that kind of gets me started faster. It's a skill I learned from someone I used to work with. Her name was Michaela Hackner, and she was just really intentional about like always reaching out to new people in the organization who joined. If she was getting on a new project and needed to know the stakeholders, she'd set up some time just to get to know them. That's one thing I've noticed that really helps kind of get it going faster, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Bridget piped up with another question. This is a good one. How do you know if you're growing as a leader? It seems so tough to measure.
Ooh, this is a good one. I would say like one of the things to do is kind of be thinking about your own goals when it comes to leadership, because they may not be everyone else's goals. So, maybe your goals have nothing to do with the company's career ladder or getting a promotion or anything like that. Maybe your own goals are, things like, I want to lead a workshop, right? Because I've never tried facilitation before. Or I want to find a way to bring a group of 4 people together so they're collaborating more effectively. And I think then when you have your own goals and you think through them intentionally like that, you can start to measure it by seeing like, am I making progress toward that? Is that happening in a meaningful way? And, what skills or things might I need to learn to prepare myself for something like that? So that's my thought, like just starting to get really crystal clear on what you want for yourself in this area. And then you can start to see, oh, am I making progress down that path?
Nice. Yeah, I think that is such a good question. I know that I have experienced some degree of growth in my own career, and it's been reinforced by feedback. Number one, I've gotten some feedback that has indicated to me that I'm definitely growing as a leader. When I've influenced other people, like you mentioned, or when I've introduced some kind of activity that folks have never done before. And I think it's just an important point that it's these little things, I think, that can really cue you in to knowing that you're growing as a leader, and just being open to those and to be able to receive them. Compliments are hard to receive. Tessa Floriano mentioned that to be taken to unexpected places, as well as knowing that it's okay to fail, is something she tries to remember. And I think that's also a really important piece, if you had any comments on that.
No, I love that. That's wonderful.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, I mean, it took me so long to learn, how to be okay with failing. I would say I'm still learning it, and I think like just being able to fail in a healthy, safe environment is so valuable. If you can find that, it's really great. So thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I have done recently to learn how to fail in my personal life is try to do my own bike maintenance. And I didn't know anything about it, right? But I ride a bike to and from work a lot of times. And like I bought some tools and tried to figure out like how to change the brake lines and all this other stuff. And I definitely broke a few things along the way, but it got me used to failing and made it pretty safe and low stakes, right? If I just had to replace a $10 brake line because I messed it up, that's okay.
Yeah, good to remember. I have one other question for you. Now that you are in more what would traditionally be called leadership roles in your work, what do you find that you may have learned beyond these lessons or that is different from the way that you influence from maybe an IC position?
Yeah, I mean, in my day job, I'm back to an IC position, which has been interesting.
Oh,
So
you
I was
are.
in management for a while and now I'm back to being an IC. Yeah, so what I'm noticing is that like managers, you have a lot of things at your disposal as a manager, right? You can really shape a lot of processes, around things like hiring, around how your team comes together, the kinds of things that they celebrate and recognize. That's something I learned as a manager. Is like you can really shape the kind of energy that a team has when and I think some managers may not always realize that they have the power to do that, right? Or that they have the influence to do that. And I think that's important to remember. And as an IC, I'm just trying to think what I'm trying to learn now, and now that I'm back in an IC role again, is to just try to be really honest with myself about what I want to do, what I want to achieve, and focus on that. Because I think it's easy to kind of see problems everywhere or things that I want to solve everywhere. And it can be overwhelming. So I think that it's really important to stay focused on what you want to get done and what you want to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that my manager is really encouraging me to do is to also really maximize my deeper skill set, specifically around. It's easy for me to kind of step into being a more of a UX generalist because my background is in UX design, and I came to content design about 10 years ago because I found myself really focused on content and really passionate about it. So one of her pieces of advice that I think is really great is to look at where I have the most to contribute and line that up with what I prioritize my time on. I thought that was a really good piece of advice as well.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I love
I
it.
wondered sorry. I
No, I
had
was
a
just
thought
gonna say,
too.
go for it.
Well, kind of going a little bit back to what Scott brought up. So, there are differences, obviously, when you come in as a consultant versus being in-house. Michael, I guess I don't know your whole resume enough to know if you've worked as a consultant or typically been in-house. But for those of us who've done, a lot of, or at least some significant part of our careers, being the outside expert, theoretically. I'm just wondering, kind of, it both gets to sort of the time frame, and that you're not necessarily, you don't have that year and a half. Seldom do you have a year and a half or whatever to try to establish any sort of leadership there. But also you know, to a lot of the people you're working with, you are a stranger. You are, may or may not be welcome, depending on how they feel about, having consultants brought in. And you also, without that sort of long-term, creating those long-term relationships, you also don't have the sort of potential to, know how your influence might last over time. Right. And I'm just curious, if you have thoughts about that and kind of if you've experienced that or if that's something that's come up for you, as you've talked with people in workshops and.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a little bit of it in my own career. I mean, I think that there are some I'll just tell you my approach. Like, and I don't know if it's particularly revolutionary, but one of the things I tried to do when I was doing client work was try to spend a lot of time listening up front. Because when I started doing it, one of the hard lessons I learned was I would just start coming, like telling people what I wanted to do, and like that didn't work out, right? That didn't work out because they weren't on board. They weren't seeing us as being on the same team. So my focus changed to like, how can I help them feel like I'm on their team as quickly as possible? And I did that by just doing a lot of listening and understanding where they were coming from, and trying to make sure that my work elevated them and didn't push them out. Like if I was coming in to like supplement an internal team, how could I shine a light on the great work they were already doing? And how can I make sure that their goals got achieved? So yeah, I mean, those are my thoughts. I don't know if it's anything particularly revolutionary, but I think like it was a big aha moment for me when I realized like I need to spend way more time listening than I have been when I get started with a client, and really understand the background and the story that happened before I got here.
Yeah, that's great. I was curious, so I put a question in the chat because I kind of wanted to know of the folks who are in the meetup right now, kind of who's in-house versus out-of-house. It looks like, well, so far it's kind of 50-50. But I think there are some different, obviously there's some different challenges there. And thank you for kind of sharing your perspective there. If anyone wants to jump in and kind of, if you've got, advice there or anything from your own experiences you'd like to share, we're happy to unmute you and let you speak. Just raise your hand. All right. Shy.
Got all your questions answered. Michael, you did such a great job.
Yeah.
I was going to say one thing that helped me at the last position I was in that I just recently left. A lot of times I felt like I wasn't being heard and appreciated by the right people. So I took the time to make sure I was heard and appreciated for what I do by the people that I worked closer with than the people that were up above me. So I worked more with my peers than with the managers. And that seemed to work out okay. Like, I think that kind of helped enable people to understand like that I can be trusted and relied upon, because it's like he's there, he does the work, and he does great work. And so it was definitely helpful to kind of remove that outsider kind of feel from working there. So that's just my experience.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. All right.
Awesome.
Well, anyone? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, it looks like we have a couple of folks who are going, oh, I guess it's dinner time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, if you guys do have any questions that come up for you, we do have a Slack community where we can definitely collect some of those and bring them to Michael, or just have a conversation. So we'll go ahead and post the link to that Slack community here in just a moment, and we'd love to have you there. And I just wanted to thank Michael. Really excellent to hear from you. I love this new area, not new, but newer area that you're really diving into. It's really important work.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.